I got sweet revenge on my wedding day with my selfish sister. Growing up, my sister Katie was the perfect child. Smart, talented, popular. The list went on and on. She was the child everyone praised, and when she did something wrong, it was always brushed off, as if it didn't matter. No one could hold her accountable, and she could do no wrong in their eyes. She was the center of attention at all times, while I was the one that no one seemed to care about. My parents often said things like, "Why can't you be more like Katie?" Or, "Katie would never do something like that." Even our extended family echoed the same sentiment. No matter what I did, it was never good enough. I was never good enough. As a kid, I tried everything to stand out. I worked so hard at school, tried to excel at everything I did, but nothing ever worked. Katie always got the praise. She always took the spotlight. And I was left in the dust. The more I tried, the more frustrated I got. But what could I do? They were my parents, and I didn't have a choice. The feeling of being overlooked, of always being the second choice, wore me down. I became the quiet one, the invisible one. No matter how hard I tried, I could never seem to do anything right. The years passed, and things didn't improve. Katie got into the best schools with ease, while I struggled just to get into a decent college. Every achievement I had was always overshadowed by her. If I got into a college, it was because of luck, or who I knew, never because I had earned it. Katie, on the other hand, was always seen as the model student, the model daughter. Nothing ever seemed to stick to her. She was perfect, and I was just me. But I didn't give up. I tried to live my life, even if I was constantly compared to her. I went through college, got a job, and eventually, I met someone. His name was Tom. He was kind, funny, and he saw me for who I truly was, not the shadow of my sister. We fell in love, and after a few years of dating, we decided to get married. That's when things started to take a turn. When I got engaged, the jealousy and tension started to build. Katie, the golden child, suddenly became the center of attention again. It was as if she couldn't stand the thought of not being in the spotlight, especially when it was supposed to be my special day. I had been planning my wedding for months, but when Katie found out about it, everything started to shift. My parents, who had spent my entire life making Katie feel special, now wanted to make her the star of my wedding too. It started with the small things. My parents suggested Katie be the maid of honor, even though I had a close friend who had been there for me through thick and thin. They kept suggesting that I let Katie take charge of certain parts of the wedding, as if it was her special day too. And the worst part? Katie didn't even care. She wasn't interested in helping with the wedding plans at all. She wasn't excited to be involved, but she loved the attention. She always loved being the center of attention. It was as if she didn't have to try. She simply took the spotlight by default. I was fed up. My wedding day was supposed to be about me and Tom. I didn't want to share the spotlight with anyone, let alone the person who had spent my entire life making me feel invisible. So I decided to do something about it. I wasn't going to let my parents or Katie take away my moment. I wanted my wedding to be about me, and no one was going to take that from me. But I had to be smart about it. I knew that if I just snapped and confronted my parents or Katie, they'd brush me off. They'd accuse me of being dramatic or selfish, as they always had. I knew I couldn't let that happen. I had to play it right. And that's exactly what I did. I began making plans behind the scenes. I quietly spoke to some of my closest friends and family, the ones who had always supported me and understood how difficult things had been. I asked for their help, and together we began laying the groundwork to ensure that the attention would be on me, on my day, whether my parents or Katie liked it or not. The most important step was to ensure the wedding would be exactly how I envisioned it. It was supposed to be my day to shine, my day to finally feel like I mattered. I couldn't let my sister, who had always seemed to take everything from me, overshadow my special moment. So, I made sure that every aspect of the ceremony was planned with me at the center. I started with the smallest details. I ensured the guest list was filled with people who truly cared about me, people who would be there to celebrate my happiness. I made sure the decorations reflected my personality, not something that Katie or my parents would have preferred. I even chose the music and the vows, making sure that every moment spoke to who I was, who I had become. I knew that my parents would not be happy with my decisions. After all, they had always prioritized Katie, but I was done playing the role of the second best daughter. This time, I was going to take control of my own narrative. My wedding wasn't going to be about anyone else. It was going to be about me. The day of the wedding arrived, and everything was set. The excitement in the air was palpable, but for me, there was a sense of nervous anticipation. I had done it. I had planned everything the way I wanted, but now I had to see if it would actually work. My parents, of course, expected things to go as usual. They thought Katie would be at the center of it all, just like always, and that I would once again fade into the background. When I walked down the aisle, I could feel the eyes of every guest on me. I could see the shock in my parents' faces as I passed by them. I was stunning, yes, but it wasn't just about my dress or my appearance. It was about the fact that, for the first time, all the attention was on me. My sister, who had always stolen the spotlight, was suddenly cast into the background, and I could see the discomfort in her eyes. She wasn't used to not being the center of attention. She wasn't used to being in the background, and that was exactly where I wanted her. I had made sure that everything I did during the ceremony kept the focus on me. From the vows to the speeches, I made sure all eyes were on me. Katie, of course, was still the maid of honor, but even her role had been downplayed. I had made sure that the entire event unfolded with me at the center. Whether it was the way I carried myself or the way the guests responded to my every word, I made sure I wasn't overlooked. And then came the father-daughter dance. For years, I had watched as Katie took the spotlight in every moment. She always danced with my dad, always had that special moment with him. But not this time. This time, it was my turn. When the music began, I walked up to my father and extended my hand. Without hesitation, he took it, and we began to dance. I could feel the tears in his eyes as he realized for the first time that this day wasn't just about my sister, it was about me. This was my moment, and I was finally taking it. As we danced, I looked around the room. My guests were watching us, and I could see the admiration in their eyes. This wasn't just a moment for me and my father, it was a statement. It was me, standing up for myself. It was me, taking back what had always been denied to me. Katie, of course, wasn't happy. She tried to put on a smile, but I could see the resentment in her eyes. She wasn't used to being pushed to the background, and she hated it. She didn't like the fact that I was finally taking control of my own life. For once, I wasn't just the second choice. I wasn't just the one living in her shadow. For once, it was my day. And Katie hated that. But for me, that was the sweetest part of it all. The rest of the wedding went by in a blur. The ceremony was perfect. The reception was a blast. And everyone seemed to be genuinely happy for me. My parents were disappointed, of course. They had hoped that things would go back to the way they always had, with Katie taking the lead and me quietly following behind. But that wasn't going to happen anymore. I wasn't going to let them treat me like that. I had finally stood up for myself, and it felt incredible. When the day ended and I was finally alone with Tom, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. I had done it. I had stood up for myself, taken control of my own narrative, and finally gotten the moment that had always been denied to me. It wasn't the most perfect wedding. There were definitely some bumps along the way, and my parents weren't thrilled with how things turned out. But in the end, I didn't care. What mattered was that I had made it mine. Katie would probably never understand why I did what I did. She would never get why it was so important to me to have this moment, to feel like I was seen for once. But that was okay. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about me. As the days after the wedding passed, I continued to reflect on everything that had happened. I couldn't help but replay the entire day in my mind, remembering the way I felt as I stood at the altar, knowing that for once I wasn't just in the background. It was a new feeling, one I hadn't experienced in so long. It was a feeling of empowerment, a sense that I finally had control over my own life, my own narrative. My wedding had been the catalyst for this change, but it was more than just a celebration of my love for Tom. It was my declaration to myself, to my family, that I was no longer going to live in the shadows of my sister. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my parents, dictate my worth. But even as I basked in the joy of my wedding day, there were moments when the old feelings of doubt crept in. I would catch myself wondering if I had gone too far, if I had overstepped. After all, Katie was still my sister. No matter how many times she had overshadowed me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt when I saw her disappointment. But that feeling was fleeting. It didn't last. I realized that despite everything, I had every right to stand up for myself. I had spent too many years feeling overlooked, ignored, and unimportant. And now I was finally in a place where I could say, enough. As the weeks turned into months, things began to settle into a new normal. Katie and I didn't talk much. It wasn't because we were in a fight, but rather because we were in different places in life. She still carried that air of superiority, the unspoken understanding that she was the golden child, but I no longer felt the need to compete with her. I had learned that my worth wasn't tied to her achievements, and that was a lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life. It wasn't easy to let go of the resentment I had built up over the years. It wasn't easy to stop comparing myself to her, to stop wanting her approval. But I learned that in order to truly move forward, I had to let go of the past. And that's exactly what I did. I started focusing on the things that truly mattered to me. I focused on my relationship with Tom, on building a life together. I focused on my career, my friends, and my passions. For the first time in a long time, I was living for me. And as time went on, something amazing happened. Katie began to see me in a new light. At first, it was subtle, a comment here and there about how happy she was that I was finally doing things for myself. She even admitted one day that she was proud of me. The words were simple, but they meant everything to me. I didn't need her approval, but hearing it from her felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. We didn't become best friends overnight. Our relationship still had its ups and downs, but the dynamic between us had shifted. For the first time, it felt like we were equals, not rivals. It was a slow process, but I was okay with that. I didn't need to force anything. I had taken back my moment, and now I could focus on building a healthier relationship with my sister, on my terms. Looking back, I don't regret a single decision I made on my wedding day. It was a moment that was long overdue, and it was a moment that changed my life. I had spent so many years living in someone else's shadow, waiting for my turn to be seen. But that day, I finally took my place in the spotlight. I realized that standing up for myself didn't make me selfish. It didn't make me a bad person. It made me strong. It made me someone who knew her worth and was finally ready to claim it. And that is something I will carry with me for the rest of my life.